Hello everyone and welcome back to AustinPlus, where today we are answering a question, as always, about my favourite show. I love Suits. Suits is amazing. But Suits ended years ago, but somehow it's more popular now than ever. After blowing up again on streaming, on Netflix, a whole new audience has discovered the show. And suddenly the question is back on the block. Is there a future for Suits? So today we are answering the question, as I've just said, is there a future for the Suits TV show? Because I love it. I know there's been extensions of it. I love Suits. I love rewatching it. I'll never get bored of it. But some people are wondering if there's more to this show than meets the eye. Is there more coming? So without further ado, let's get into it. So why did Suits come back mysteriously in a very big way? Mysteriously, as in we don't know why. Suits didn't actually quietly return, it just exploded in popularity thanks to streaming, which introduced it to a younger audience while igniting interest for long-term fans. Its fast-paced dialogue, charismatic characters, and binge-friendly structure can make it very perfectly suited for modern viewing habits, turning what was once a successful network drama into a renewed cultural talking point. Now, I got into Suits because I kept on seeing clips of it online. That's how I often watch a lot of shows. If I get multiple clips after clips, I'm like, fine, I'll watch it. And I often do enjoy it. And Suits is one of them shows. I've watched it so many times. This was a few years ago, but I've watched it on repeat, and I love it. And it's actually what's encouraged me to do what I want to do now, which is business. But I do think this show is very impactful. I do think many people do enjoy it because what made Suits work is because at its core, Suits was never really about law. It was about the characters, the relationships, particularly the dynamic between Harvey and Mike until season 8, but which drove the emotional and narrative weight of the whole show. Combined with sharp, witty dialogue and a strong sense of style, the series created a unique identity where personal stakes often mattered more than the legal cases themselves, making it a highly engaging and rewatchable show over and over again. So, to understand if there is a future, we have to understand the ending, because Suits ended in a way that felt relatively complete, with the key character arcs reaching satisfying conclusions and the central relationships resolving naturally. Mike and Rachel moved on, Harvey and Donna finally found their closure, and the firm itself just evolved, meaning the show didn't leave behind a major cliffhanger, but rather a sense of finality that could be difficult to revisit without undetermining that closure, and I do think spin-offs are a problem. Where I'm gonna go with this is a bit different. There's 2 spin-offs projects and stuff that I'm a bit like, I can't tell if they're like, one of them's a spin-off, one of them's a spin-off, and one of them's a prequel, and one of them's a sequel. Now, we all know my opinions on them, but first of all, Pearson was a prequel, sort of. It's a sequel to when Pearson left, but it's technically a prequel to the Suits show. The franchise already attempted expansion with Pearson, which shifted the focus to Jessica Pearson in a political setting rather than continuing the legal drama tone of Suits. Now, while the idea had potential, it struggled to capture the same appeal, and ultimately just failed to connect with audiences because you didn't have that same witty stuff that you had with the likes of Harvey and Mike. But showing that simply extending the universe isn't enough if it loses the elements that made the original series to work. You have to have them for it to work. That's just math. That is just the number one rule of mathematics. You need to have the same, if you need to have something that makes it click, and Pearson was just a odd strand of what made it click. Like, you had Harvey and Mike, and then obviously on Harvey's end of things, you had Donna, you had Pearson, and on Mike, you had like Rachel, the grandma who died in season 2. But anyway, so the next spin-off that I want to talk about, and this is the one that hurt me. It really hurt, and I was going to do a review on it. I dragged my heels trying to do a review on it, so I didn't do it. And it's Suits LA. I love Suits, and I will reiterate that in this whole video. But Suits LA was actually fucking dreadful. With Suits LA, The franchise was coming to a clear, moving forward state by introducing a new setting, new characters, while attempting to maintain the tone and style that defined the original. By shifting to Los Angeles and exploring the legal environment, and the series had the opportunity to feel fresh. But it also carries the challenges of living up to the expectations of the original show, and that was your problem. They brought back Harvey Specter as the big, it was Ted Black, who was by Stephen Amell, who was the main character, and he was best mates with Harvey Specter. Not a bad shout. I think it made sense, and they also related it back to 2010 when Harvey was actually still in Boston, I believe it was. And it all made sense. Oh no, New York, that's what it was. And it all made sense, and it was about crime family, it was about being a prosecutor. It was great until the end. I don't know how they went from that to that so quickly, and I think that's why I was so irritated. The first couple of episodes I was like, okay, this has potential. It just got progressively worse. They brought back Daniel Hardman. They brought back flipping Louis Litt for a single episode, may I add, and it just didn't make sense. Yeah, that's why I didn't do a rant on Suits LA for a whole video, because that's what the whole video would have been. It doesn't make sense. But the next question is, if they were to carry on with the show, should they bring the original cast back? The return of the original characters could delegate balance, because while cameos or limited appearances could excite fans and create a sense of continuity, relying too heavily on them risk preventing the new series from establishing its own identity, which is exactly what happened with Suits LA. They leaned way too heavily on Harvey. They did at the end. At the start they were like, oh yeah, I've got a kid, he's this age, and he's like, this is his name. I don't even remember, which is the annoying part. And that was like, yeah, they're setting the foundation for what Donna and Harvey's future. They're giving people a tiny bit of story. The future of the Suits depends on whether it can stand on its own rather than the constantly referring to the past, because just let the past be the past. Now, Suits, I think the idea of carrying on the franchise is a bit difficult, because they run the risk of repeating the same formula. One of the biggest risks is falling back into the same formula that defined the original show, where each episode follows a predictable structure of conflict, negotiation, and last-minute resolution. And while that format was successful, repeating it without evolution could make a new series feel outdated or overly familiar in a modern television landscape. So, I do think the formula works, but it only worked once. You can't repeat that, and it will just dilute the original, which I think is no one wants it, including me. I would hate for that to happen. There is still potential for this franchise, there is no doubt about that. But why is there still potential? Despite the risks, Suits still has a strong, potential moving forward, because the legal drama genre remains popular to these days, Lincoln Lawyer and all. The brand recognition is higher than ever, and the show's tone, stylish, character-driven, and fast-paced characters still resonates with audiences today. With the right approach, a new series could capture what works while adapting to modern expectations. But I'm going to put a hold on that, because Suits LA was actually probably their biggest, probably the best idea they could have done, and they bottled that, so I don't think it's a good idea. What the future needs to get right is that for Suits to successfully continue, it needs to establish a strong central dynamic similar to Harvey and Mike, where they tried to do the same with Ted Black and his mate, but one of them ended up stabbing him in the back in the very first episode. That didn't make sense. So if you create a fresh setting that feels distinct, focusing on character-driven storytelling rather than relying solely on procedural structure, I think that a build of confidence in its own identity rather than depending on the nostalgia is probably your best bet. So, is there a future for Suits? There can be, but only if it isn't willing to move forward, not just look back. I think because what made Suits work wasn't just the world it was in, it was the people that was in it. There's definitely a path for Suits, but it isn't guaranteed to succeed, and I think that's why I keep coming back to Suits LA, because it depends on the show's ability to evolve while maintaining its core appeal. A new cast and a setting that can work, but only if they bring something new to the table instead of simply just recreating what came before it. But there you have it, that's the end of today's video. I do hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and comment what else you would like to see on the channel. But I hope you have an amazing day as always, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.